Hi, Jules, and welcome to Reframe Club. Thank you so much for joining us today. And I guess the best way to start is to ask you to tell us a little bit more about who you are and what it is that you do.
Okay. Thank you for asking me to come along and do this. I tend to be quite kind of private, so putting myself out in the world is another sobriety step. But my name is Jules Rutherford. My business is Sobersistas. I got sober 3.5 years ago now. I was never an alcoholic. I was just somebody that drank too much and used it as a kind of daily life prop, if you like, and crutch. And I started a Facebook group to find women like me to talk to, because I felt some of the other groups on Facebook weren't really my thing. And what I realised quite quickly, because of my background and my training and various things, I realised I was starting to help women, and I was kind of making suggestions and they were coming back and saying, oh, that's great, I've done it and it's fantastic. So over the last 3.5 years, I've kind of developed programs for women, and the group's now over 5,000 and going strong. You know, it's absolutely amazing. And I suppose one of the big things for me about being sober is I've actually stopped selling now, because I've been trying to market and sell to my audience for a long time now, and it never felt right. And I've moved to a kind of, you can have what I have for free and with love, and then if you want to make a donation to it, well, that's absolutely fine. But if you don't, I'd rather you just got sober, you know. So that's essentially what I do.
And that's such an amazing testimony, I think, to not only you as a person, but also I think when you come to a role that's serving others, that you want to give back, time and time again, in my own world, self, other coaches, people I meet, it comes from that lived experience, doesn't it? That lived experience of knowing what's there and really being able to empathize with the people that you're supporting, but knowing so well what is the other side of that all you want is to help get that person there.
Yeah. And I think with me, I think one of the things that happened to me recently, because obviously we live in a very, you know this, with the whole kind of diet culture, is that we live in such a heavily marketed life, you know, where we're constantly being sold to on a regular basis. And I received an email recently that said, you know, going live in 15 minutes to come and find out how to charge your worth. And I think it was that made me realise, well, in reality, I don't really value my worth by how much money I have in the bank. My value is in who I am and in how I help. And I think, and certainly by who I love and who loves me. But the whole sort of running a business and that type of thing, for me, if I have to go and get a job in order to continue to do this is what I want to do for the rest of my life, because there is nothing more utterly life affirming and empowering than watching a woman say her last goodbye from the group, because she's now gone and changed her life and, you know, has realised what her worth is, and how, you know, sobriety unlocks so much potential in you, and you can just kind of go, right, I'm away. That's, you know, I'm off now.
I mean, I remember once when you and I first met, and you invited me to come in and chat to some of the Sobersistas. I remember you saying that I'm a bit of a unicorn. And I always remember that. You said, Rose, you're a bit of a unicorn, because I know that I have a very take it or leave it relationship with alcohol. So I can not drink, I can have one drink, I can go out and have a couple of drinks, I can stop there and then think about it again for another week. But I also know from my experience with my clients that a relationship with alcohol can actually be very complex, and it's something that can be really tied up with restriction, dieting, poor body image, all of it's kind of not eating to support our physiological well-being. So we end up getting blood sugar pressures and we end up drinking wine because your body wants it quickly. It's also highly interrelated. I guess in your experience, what would you say is the point in time when perhaps we need to look at our relationship with alcohol through a different kind of lens? Because it's also so normalised in society, isn't it?
Yes, it's almost like, I mean, the number of women who come into the group and say, I've just told friends that I'm not drinking anymore, and they've been, you know, rude or laughed or made a bet that she'll never do it, and, you know, and all this kind of thing. Alcohol, I think, can be the first step to just getting everything else sorted. Because obviously, the minute you stop drinking, most women go on the sugar binge, because if you're drinking wine, you're having a lot of sugar, that takes a bit of time. But it's much easier to make all the right decisions for your health once you have the clear mind that comes with being sober. Of course, it depends on why you're drinking. If you're drinking to deal with kind of difficulties with past trauma and all of that, it can be a bit scary to stop drinking, but support is out there, and I think there's so much better stuff on the other side of staying sober. And in reality, I mean, Sobersistas is not for alcoholics, it's just for women who drink too much. So the detox period for most women is manageable, and you know, it's relatively easy to get beyond. And once you've done that, for me, the exciting bit is, okay, now you're sober, what else? You know, and it's then that getting to grips with things like, you know, exercise and how you eat becomes much easier, because you're not doing this constant negotiation with yourself.
Yeah, and I think there's another point there that alcohol also is, it does several things, and I'm going to come at this from the point of view that obviously not everybody, you know, some people can develop a very healthy, mindful relationship with with alcohol. Yeah. But for others, as you're saying, perhaps those who come to your group who aren't alcoholics but have, in the same way we can perhaps rely on food, or when food becomes our only way of managing our emotions, alcohol can become a way that we manage our emotions. And perhaps it's when we're tipping a little bit too much towards one direction, rather than the kind of somewhere in the middle. And for some women, there will never be that unicorn. There can't be that mindful relationship with alcohol can't manifest, can it? So I mean, it is.
I think I've never been against alcohol. I don't see it as the enemy as such. My hope for women is that when they get sober, then they kind of give themselves a choice of two paths. Basically, the first path can be, I'm going to get sober so that I can see what life is like.
Yeah.
Get control with it, you know, get it under control, and then make some choices about how I want alcohol to be in my life, be that in a moderate way, and that kind of thing. That does have its problems. I'll come back to that in a second. But the other choice, the other path, is to, and I think this is the hard one, this is the one that a lot of people don't think about, is making the choice to be sober for the rest of your life. And that is the one that a lot of women come into the group and they'll say, right, I'm going to do 30 days and I'm going to get sober and it's going to be great. And then after a few months, which is what tends to happen, is if you don't make that decision to whatever that decision is, which either side, you generally find that somewhere between 3 and 6 months of sobriety, there's often a, right, I've got this, I can moderate now. But they can't, because they've not made the decision as to which path that they've decided to be on. And often moderation can sometimes, if you try it too soon, what often follows is a bigger drinking cycle than you were before you stopped. That's quite common.
I can understand that, and I can sort of reflect it back to the work I do in that with intuitive eating, people can say, "Yep, I've got it. I'm intuitive eating. I'm in tune with my body. I know my hunger and fullness, etc., etc." But actually, they haven't rejected the underlying diet mentality. So the minute there's a stressor in life, their thought process go back to, "It's your fault. your body's not right. If I just lose half a stone, I will feel better, and then everything will fall into place. So I'll just do that." And then they haven't actually done the full work underneath, and then they fall back into the restrict binge.
Yeah.
And we see this.
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, I'm probably a good example of that, because when I gave up drinking, to me, initially, it just felt like I'd taken my brain out and give it a wash and popped it back in. It just felt all kind of like sparkly and happy and brilliant. And I just thought it was the best thing ever. And I had some stuff in my past that I found that drinking kind of stopped me from having to deal with it. And then it just became food, and which is how you and I kind of met up, because I really don't, I'm educated enough to know that a diet in the magic pill sense doesn't work, because you need to change your lifestyle and have, like, alcohol's not the enemy, neither is food in any form. And so it took me quite a long time to get to grips with the food thing. And of course, I've got the added kind of thing that I hate cooking. So, and I live alone. So I've always got this, oh God, thing about food. So it's taken me quite a long time to get to grips with that. And, having that time with you, last year was brilliant in kind of resetting my mind. It took me a little while longer to because I wanted to be vegan. So it's taken me a while to get to that point. But believe it or not, I'm now doing Zumba, of all things, and I bought an exercise bike and, that kind of thing. So I know that I'm now at that kind of the other side of that, and I'm heading towards a kind of life that feels good, that, I certainly wouldn't consider alcohol at all to deal with stress, Food, yeah, absolutely. I would say over the last 3 years, it's still been a bit of a thing. And I think that's the message I'm always trying to tell sober sisters. Getting sober doesn't make you perfect. It doesn't solve all of your problems, but it does give you a great platform to be able to, and it takes, I think one of the big things as well is, like, you do gain a natural sort of, I want to call it like a natural sort of strong feminine confidence when you get sober. It's so lovely, to be happily female. I certainly, when I got sober, lost that whole kind of terrible, like, negative self-talk about my body image. That went. It was just, it's taken me a bit longer to go, right, okay, now, Jules.
That's amazing, though. That's amazing that it, and I think it's important to make a point that, alcohol, we kind of underestimate. Everyone goes, "Oh no, we know, having, too much alcohol isn't good for us." But I think it's sometimes important to understand. I obviously talk about, in my world, there's food is, there's a part for all foods, and there's a balance, etc., etc. But there are specific things we know that in excess aren't good for us, and smoking and alcohol are two of those things. But you can't get away from that. And the reality is that our emotional well-being and our physical well-being are so highly interrelated, and alcohol does several things. Alcohol, one of the first things it does is it puts your gatekeeper to sleep. It stops your decision maker being on the ball. Ollie snoozes, has at the gate, or she snoozes at the gate, and we tend to, then find ourselves perhaps backlash eating, or eating a lot of food that we wouldn't necessarily normally make that choice. And not least also because alcohol is glucose, it's a free sugar, it wreaks havoc with our blood sugar. So our blood sugar will spike, and then it will go down, and then obviously when it crashes, we'll then crave those more sugar dense foods.
Yeah.
But I think two of the most interesting things about alcohol, which people aren't always aware of, is that it's such a massive sleep disruptor. So it sedates you. So when you're anxious or stressed, having that drink, that instant relaxation, that I'm going to fall asleep, it helps me go to sleep. My mind's not wearing. That instant sedation is only short-lived, and then you're up in light wave sleep for the rest of the night. So you're never getting the deep sleep. So in the mornings you're waking up, you're tired, you're exhausted. It's harder to regulate your emotions. And then when it's harder to regulate our emotions throughout the day, and our blood sugar goes out of whack, and then we're comfort eating, and the cycle continues.
Yeah.
And then I think the other point to make around it is around how it inhibits things like B vitamins. And why B vitamins, there are energy, because they're part of our nervous systems, how we deal with anxiety, our red blood cells, but in particular B6. And B6 is plays a role in serotonin.
Right. Yeah.
So without B6, or enough B6, we won't be producing enough serotonin. Of course, serotonin is our happy hormone.
Yes.
And then we're more likely to feel low. And then we're low, we reach for the wine glass.
Resort to the habitual things that we normally resort to. The couple of things in there. The thing about sleep, this is a massive kind of talking topic in Sobersistas, because lots of women use alcohol to sedate themselves to go to sleep. And what they don't, and most women don't realize that it does keep you don't get proper sleep. The really challenging part about giving up alcohol is that the health benefits are, manifest. I mean, there are plenty of them. It's all over your body. I remember watching a documentary where a doctor who was dealing with sort of alcohol addiction, he actually said, there is not one part of the body that isn't negatively affected by alcohol, which is just staggering really when you think about it. And that the minute that you stop, every single part of your body will begin to heal and improve. But one of the things about when you give up is that sleep, for all the other things that improve relatively quickly, sleep is actually one of the last things that actually becomes normal again. So there's a lot of frustration in those early days because there are, because you haven't got that immediate sedation, you've got that can't get to sleep sort of element of the night. And my advice is just get out of bed, make a cup of tea, have some toast, watch some rubbish on TV, just distract yourself for a little while, and just go back to bed when you know you're tired, or put a pillow on the sofa and, sleep when you feel like it. Because the whole thing about fighting yourself, because that's all you're doing when you're lying in bed, isn't it? I still have bouts of insomnia, but I'm postmenopausal, and I think that just comes with that. And I think if you can just, it's this whole thing about just being nice to yourself a bit more often. It's like, if you can't sleep, do something nice. Have a cup of tea.
Yeah, we tend to, and that's the thing, we tend to turn it straight into a stick with which to beat ourselves.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm failing. See, this is another thing you can't do. You can't go to sleep. And as you say, if you can reframe that, look what I did there. Yeah. If you can reframe that, you can so as you say, you can turn those moments, and actually getting out of bed is one of the best things you can do, because your body then goes, whoa, hold on a minute, we're not meant to be up, and gives you a nice little dose of melatonin and will help you fall quickly again. But yeah, I think that's something I think especially as women, we tend to do a lot. We tend to see turn every obstacle or barrier into something with which to give ourselves a hard time about.
Oh, yeah, because we're really good at that, aren't we? Right. We're really good at kind of, like, I often say it's like, oh, look, there's a stick to beat myself with. I tell you what, I'm just going to stick a nail in the end, just to make sure that I do the job properly. This is, and I suppose I think this has probably been the biggest revelation for me in getting sober. It's why I'm so passionate about what I do. Is I was that woman. I was, give me one nail, give me half a dozen. I mean, I want to do the job properly, and the reality of being sober has just made me. I am just the happiest I have ever been. And even when I'm chowing down on, sweets and crisps or whatever it is, doesn't it, even when I'm doing that, I'm doing it kind of completely mindfully, that it's okay. I'm not abusing myself with alcohol. I'm not making myself mindless. And I think that's the real benefit in it, is I am 100% mindfully conscious 100% of the time. And to me, that's worth gold.
That's a really powerful statement to have made, because I think that's so true. If we are perhaps too reliant on alcohol to manage our stress and all of those things, it does cloud your decision making. And when you can lift that fog away, and then you're making those choices, as you say, mindfully, and using your knowledge to make that choice, rather than it being a physiological response to low blood sugar or exhaustion or all of the things that come the day after drinking a lot of alcohol, then you can also be far more compassionate with yourself, and you can take those times as learning opportunities, and you can actually say, actually, I know the reason why I ended up eating family size bag of Maltesers, it's because I skipped lunch, or I didn't eat enough for breakfast, and then I didn't have a snack and I only had a tiny lunch, and by the time I got there I was hungry. And you can join the dots, can't you?
And mine is comfort. I live alone. I have occasional bouts of loneliness, but I see it for what it is. You know what I mean? That is, I know, like, oh, it would be nice, if one of my kids was here or something like that, but it literally doesn't last very long. And sometimes if I self-soothe with a bag of Maltesers as well, it's okay, because most of the time I don't do that. Most of the time I don't do that. So that's, a big progress for me, to be perfectly honest with you, because it's been a big problem. But I think the thing about alcohol is we don't actually realise, most women don't realise how much they're drinking. So it's very easy to be on the wrong side of alcohol without actually realising how much you've actually taken in. And most women drink for 2 drinks. The first one is, I know what's coming next. First one down is like, right, okay, I'm getting ready. The second one is, that's what I was looking for. And they don't realise that everything after that is just a waste of time and the slippery slope down, and that's where the arguments come from, and the texting people at 3 o'clock in the morning saying things that you never ever would say if you were sober, and then follows the shame and the guilt
and the anxiety, alcohol anxiety.
And of course, alcohol causes anxiety as well. And so many women report, like being on, and I make no medical claims about Sobersistas, but lots of them saying they either reduce or get rid of anxiety medication, anti-anxiety medication, that their anxiety, those that even don't take it, say that, their anxieties have pretty much disappeared, because most of them, I think the worst thing about alcohol, it kind of makes you, it adds to, if you've got any feelings of like a lack of self-esteem or a lack of confidence, alcohol's almost like the thing that makes it 100 times worse.
Yeah, it's like throwing a match in, isn't it? Into a tank. It's like giving it more.
And it just, and I see so many amazingly brilliant women who've got huge amounts of talent that's untapped, and just shining women, once they realise what alcohol is doing to them. Things like getting to grips with the diet and doing some regular exercise just becomes kind of easy. for them.
And again, it goes back to this thing that there's this there's obviously our emotional relationship and how we're feeling emotionally, but also physically. Joining the dots is that alcohol dehydrates us. So when it dehydrates us, it slows how blood moves around our body, which means that when we it's harder to exercise because it's harder to get the oxygen around your body because your blood's stickier, for want of a better term. Mm-hmm. But also your temperature will go up, so you'll be hot and sweaty, and it won't be an enjoyable experience. If you're in a dehydrated state. So I don't think we always realise, and I know when I spoke to you before, I said, alcohol's a bit like dropping a pebble into a pond. We don't understand how far-reaching the ripples are throughout the body. All we think in that moment is, I feel better for that short window of time. So how does someone, so this is quite, and I, probably people listening to this would like to poke me in the eye, but as someone who hasn't, I've never really, I don't like drinking, I can take it, I can leave it. But for someone who can't, and I have a very dear friend who would say that she had a complicated relationship with alcohol. She's not an alcoholic, but she is emotionally lent into it as a way of self-medicating, for want of a better word, around anxiety. And she is currently on her own sobriety journey. And in that time, as you say, her fog has lifted, she feels in control, she's made some amazing choices about her future and her career. It's been amazing to see. But she's had to come to that in her own time. As much as, from an outside perspective. How does someone bring awareness to where that line is? Because you said, quite often we're not always aware how much we're drinking, or where is the awareness that actually alcohol has gone from being something that's part of a broader, wider, glass with Sunday lunch kind of relationship to having a more negative impact in our lives? How can someone bring awareness to that?
Bringing awareness to it actually is things like, if you are looking, for sobriety groups, things like that. Sorry, I think my chair's dropping. But I think I can't bring somebody to that point. They have to know. If I'm honest, I think most women, most people know exactly how much they're drinking and how much of a problem it is. I just think they're just not ready to have that conversation with themselves, which is one of the reasons why when some of Sobersistas kind of give up, they'll often report difficulties with other people. And, my response is always love and compassion, because what you're doing is holding up a mirror to them. When you're saying, I'm sober, this is amazing, I'm doing this, you're basically reminding people that something that they already know, which is they're probably drinking too much. And that's, and that's not and that's one of the reasons why we have this sort of society culture kind of thing about, if you give up drinking, then you must be boring and blah 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 nonsense. I actually think this is my little kind of mantra about other people, is in the same way that if somebody came to you and said they were watching what they were eating, and they were being mindful about it, you wouldn't offer them a big fat cream cake, and you wouldn't offer somebody a cigarette who's given up smoking. Do you know what I mean? You wouldn't pressure them in the way we do a lot of the time with alcohol. Go on. For me, being sober is about being out and proud about it. I am delighted that I am sober. I will never drink alcohol again because I just think it's the best thing ever. It's the best thing I've ever done for myself. And I personally believe that one day not drinking will be just as common as not smoking is now, and it'll be seen in the same way. I quite like being at the leading edge of changing the world. It's, even if it's one sober sister at a time, you know what I mean? It's absolutely fine. And I think that's the conversation where I'm coming from, that I would like to change. I would like to change the dialogue around the fact that actually, since I've stopped drinking, and I don't say this with arrogance, I've become way more interesting since I stopped drinking than I ever was when I was drinking. So it's just,
Because of room. We make room. We make energy, mental energy and physical energy to go and do the other stuff, to live a different, fuller life.
Yeah.
Way.
Yeah. And I think the other side of that as well is, this is something that took me a little while to notice in the group, is that I forgot in the early days that, as women, we have a natural intuition. We have gifts of nurture and care, and and it's natural for us to be a certain way. And I don't mean that in a barefoot in the kitchen way. I mean in a truly feminine, kind of female way. Alcohol takes away so much good stuff from us. We have amazing intuition, and it's almost impossible to be intuitive if you've got a thick head every day.
Yeah.
It's almost impossible. And like your friend who's started to make amazing decisions, I can pretty much guarantee those have come from her intuition and her guidance. Like, this is right for me. Tuning into who you really are. And one thing I would say is, if you really want to not even question your relationship with alcohol, just question, like, everything that you're doing is to look at your life and say, is this the life I came here to live? Is this what I'm doing now, how I want to continue living? I know we're in very difficult circumstances at the minute, but I was thinking about this the other day about COVID and, us coming out of it from the pandemic point of view, when things improve. Not quite sure about when that might be, but at the moment, I know there are lots of women who are drinking more than they've ever done.
Yeah, lockdown, definitely. Lots of my peer friends have said, "Oh, I'm drinking far more during lockdown."
Yeah, and my question would be, how do you want to come out of this? Do you want to come out of it like realizing that you've really got a really bad alcohol problem, or do you want to stop now, and the next time you see all of your friends, they all go, "My God, you look amazing," because it transforms, it transforms you.
They're really powerful questions. Is this the life that you showed up to lead? I think that's it's true. Who and what are we allowing? What external voices are you allowing to shape the journey that you're on? Be that alcohol or diet talk or social media or whatever. Actually, who are you handing control over to?
Yeah. And there's a couple of things in there. The first one, I'll do this so I don't forget. The first one is, it's like, you're never going to get to your deathbed wishing you'd drank more alcohol or spent more time in the office. It's just not. It's not how we see our lives progressing. The other side of that is, I know that some women drink alcohol because they are in relationships that they're not ready to do something about. And I get a lot of questions about that side of things, and my answer is always, focus on yourself, get sober. Don't worry about everything else as much as possible. Stay sober, get sober till you feel strong enough to deal with whatever's in front of you, because I've seen every possible outcome, every permutation of outcomes from getting sober. I've seen couples who were split up who've got back together because they've realised that alcohol is the only thing that's causing the problem. I've seen couples split up, because it's the right thing to do, because actually for some, drinking together is the thing that's holding them together. And, for others, it's actually being able to connect on a much deeper, better, more kind of loving level that actually takes their relationship off to new heights. So any possibility is out there, but I would say if it's on your mind and that's one of the reasons why you're drinking, just focus on getting sober. It's okay to take care of yourself for a little while.
Yeah, and I think that's something I was going to ask you about. How do we support ourselves? How do you position self-care? And I think it is about those fundamentals as well, isn't it? When we say putting yourself first for a while, we don't mean, have you booked your afternoon tea and spa break? We mean prioritizing true priorities like eating well and
yeah,
working on reducing or eliminating your alcohol and moving, and just the fundamentals of emotional and physical well-being. Because without those, well, we can't.
Well, it's like the oxygen mask analogy, isn't it? When you're in the aeroplane, you're told, if the oxygen mask pops down, put your own on before you deal with the children. And that's, I think that stands for anything.
So what does self-care mean to you, Jules? How have you felt it since you've been on your journey to sobriety? How has that shifted for you? What does that look like now?
Well, self-care for me is actually, the big thing for me has been the negative self-talk and shifting that to somewhere else that doesn't exist. That doesn't exist anymore. And I over the years, I've been meditating for many years, and I do gratitude every day, and I have my little list of daily habits for growth. Just my little things. I have a vision board up there. I've got, I love this. This is my dream jar. My dreams are in here. And every day I take them out and read them. And if I think of anything as time goes on, I'll add more to it. And they're all lovely things. There's no money tag in here at all. It's just makes it Sobersistas sustainable. That's fine. I don't need a lot to live on. And actually knowing, because I discovered when I got sober that I always used to think that I was an extrovert and alcohol kind of helped me added to that. Truth is, I'm absolutely complete not an introvert. Lots of people drain me, and I am not energized by lots of people. And knowing that I can see it. It's like Friday, for example, I was on calls and stuff from 9:30 in the morning till 8:30 at night. And literally all day on Saturday was just silence, and being in silence for me is a real kind of moment of joy. I love that. But that's easy for me because I live alone, and I don't have anybody. I don't even have animals to make noises. It's just me and me. But self-care for me is just actually putting and this is the sort of mantra that I put in Sobersistas all the time. It's 3 letters to remember, which is MLT, which stands for most loving thing. So if I'm having a bit of a struggle or I'm feeling a bit rubbish, what's the most loving thing that you can do for yourself in this moment? It can never be to drink alcohol or give myself a hard time, call myself stupid names or anything like that. It's what's the nice thing that you can do. And sometimes the nicest thing I can do is put an episode of Star Trek on with a cup of tea and a biscuit, and that works for me.
Oh, I love that. Most loving thing. I think that's so easy to remember, MLT.
Yeah.
If anyone comes away with anything from today, holding on to that can only possibly help them move forward in a positive way.
It's the most loving thing that you can do, because it works in any situation. Because we get so wrapped up in drama stories with each other, and pulls of energy, and having to be right. I quite like being wrong these days. I quite like sort of going like, oh yeah, I thought that was, no, well, never mind. Okay, nobody, it's not the end of the world.
Grow, don't we? That's how we
Yeah.
grow, when we're open to the journey.
One more thing I would like to add about my self-care, because I did this a little while ago. I'm no artist. I'm peeling it off the wall, sorry. I think everybody should do this. I really do. I did this on something else, and these are my achievements. So there's all sorts of things. I mean, honestly, I'm no crafter, as you can tell. I just had a post-it pad and I just basically wrote them all down on there. But there are things on there, like I've travelled the world alone. I've achieved a huge amount in the last year. I saved an organisation almost £2 million. I've created Sobersistas, and these are all things that I've achieved for myself in the last 3-5 years. And that is on the wall in front of me. So if I ever have a moment where I'm like, what's going on? It's right in front of me. And I think, yeah, you can do things.
When self-doubt creeps in. Yeah. And not least because I think that's a really powerful thing. And I think having it visually front and center is really powerful, because we tend to put so much weight in the one tiny comment, the one thing that, the one mistake we made. Mm-hmm. And that can sit within the context of 100 amazing achievements. Yep. But somehow neurologically we're programmed to focus on that, and then we take ourselves down that rabbit hole of negativity. Having that front and center, that's a really powerful, reminder.
I think from my point of view, I think as a sort of overarching goal for Sobersistas, I just want women to stop drinking so that they can all be like what they actually are, which is absolutely amazing, so we can take over the world. Because those lovely men in our lives have had their turn. Mm-hmm. It's our turn now,
I understand that, because I totally believe that diet culture and living under the male gaze, we've been conditioned to live under the male gaze, and that's the truth. The truth of it is we're all self-objectifying as women, because we're taught that we have to make ourselves look attractive men to look at. And if we can reject diet culture and reject the whole concept of trying to force our bodies to be, go from, I was speaking to my friend the other day, and I said, just think about the lifetime our mothers have lived through, how many decades they've been told their body needed to shift. Yeah. From being curvy in the 50s, by the time they got to the 60s, they had to look like Twiggy. How on earth would any woman be able to do that? And by rejecting that as women, it keeps us small, because we're hungry. We're hungry, we're small. We haven't got the energy to do what we're meant to be doing. If we are well fed and nourished and taking care of our health and are strong, then we can go on and take on the world.
I think mostly everybody knows how strong and amazing and brilliant women are, and I think if we created a little bit of a revolution, I think who knows,
Very true. And if you were on a mountain then, Jules, or you could have a billboard, my brother always uses the analogy of a billboard next to the biggest motorway exit you can imagine. It could say one thing. What would your billboard say?
I laugh about that. When I saw your sort of pre-question, I was looking at that and thought, this is quite funny, because I often say, if I was queen of the world, and it's basically just stop drinking. So much good follows from not drinking. So many good things. There is nothing bad about sobriety at all, and don't be afraid of it. It's, because everything that follows from in sobriety is all good. You might have to learn to deal with some uncomfortable emotions because you've never had to deal with them before, but you can do them when you're sober. That's it. Just stop. It's just such a waste of your beautiful energy. Such a waste of who you are.
I love that. Let's all stop wasting our beautiful energy. Yeah. Wherever that energy sucker may be coming from, let's all stop
just
wasting
it
our
doesn't
beautiful
matter,
energy.
you know, because literally the minute that you stop drinking, so many different things start to improve and fall into place, and life just becomes so much easier.
Yeah, I can believe that. I really can. And finally, where can people find you? Where can they find out about Sober Sisters, your courses, your
Um,
coaching?
I've got probably the best place to be is in Sober Sisters closed group on Facebook, because that's where all the mad joy and fabulousness is. It's just to note that it's spelt kind of slightly differently. So it's sober, spelt normally, and then it's SISTAS, sisters. Um, yeah, so that's I think if you search Sober Sisters
If you
closed,
send me all the links, I'll pop them in the show notes.
yeah.
So everyone
And then
can.
there's the website as well. But just if anybody is, you know, coming back to what I said about, I give my time and all the services and products that I've created freely and with love. There is no obligation to make a contribution. It matters not to me. What matters to me is that if I'm helping somebody get sober, that's the goal. So there's
That's
courses on there.
Jules, can I just say that's your beautiful energy right there.
Yeah, it is. It is the best thing I've ever done. I love it. I love it.
Amazing. Thank you so much for your time today, Jules. I think so
Absolutely.
many listeners who will take huge value from today. I really do. Thank you for your time.
Oh, and thank you for asking me. It's so nice.